My name is Gretchen Rubin, and I'm the author of The Happiness Project. I got the idea to do a happiness project at a very inconspicuous moment of my life. I was stuck on a city bus in the pouring rain with nothing to read or distract myself with. So I had one of those rare opportunities for reflection, and I thought, what do I want from life anyway? And I thought, I want to be happy. But I realized I didn't spend any time thinking about whether I was happy or how I could be happier. And in a flash, I thought, I should have a happiness project. And I saw it all at once, that I would have themes and charts, and I would do all this research, and I would learn the science and the philosophy. And I went out the next day, got this giant stack of books from the library, and started researching. And at first, it was just going to be for myself. I didn't even think about it as a book project. I just wanted to know if I wanted to make myself happier as just part of my ordinary routine, how would I even think about it? Because happiness can seem very complicated and transcendent. So what would I actually do differently? But I've been working on it for, just on my own, doing my own research. And then before long, I thought, maybe this would be an interesting book. So that's how I got the idea for the Happiness Project, which then I did decide might make a good book. When I started it, first I didn't imagine it as anything except for me. Then I thought of it as a book. And I started blogging almost by accident, because one of the scientific theories that I needed to test, because my idea was that I was going to test drive all these theories, was the idea that novelty and challenge make people happier. So I had to find something to do that was novel and challenging for me. And I was somebody who was not technical, who didn't read blogs, who'd never been a daily journalist. And so for me, writing a blog seemed incredibly new, incredibly intimidating. But I thought, well, I'll give it a shot. And when I started my blog, I was very reassured by the fact that I thought that no one would ever read it, no one would ever see it. But I started it, and I learned that I loved it. I loved having a blog. And pretty soon, I actually started getting readers. And then I had the excitement of being able to engage with people on a subject that fascinated me. And it was also incredibly illuminating for me to have a way to think. I think by writing. And so by writing these things and engaging with other people about them, I felt like I was thinking much more deeply and sort of leaping ahead of myself. And then once I had the blog, then I started seeing how other things could fit into it slowly. I slowly started understanding how Twitter worked. I started understanding how I could bring Facebook into it. I started seeing how I could have a monthly newsletter, how I could have a daily email that would be a quotation, because I realized I love quotations, and there's a whole bunch of people who love quotations too. So it was sort of by doing one thing, I started to see the possibilities of the other. At the beginning, if you had said, okay, 2 years from now, 5 years from now, this is what the whole package is going to look like, I would have been terrified. I wouldn't have believed that I would have been able to figure out how to do all this and how to manage it. But because I only just put one little foot in front of the other, which is very Happiness Project, the way to approach something, because I just did it step by step, and slowly I built sort of all these different pieces around this idea of doing a happiness project. Well, one of the questions that all authors right now are facing is, to what degree should they feel responsible for getting their books out there and promoting their books? And for some authors, that seems like a lot of fun and it comes naturally to them. But for many writers, that's not something that they naturally want to do, and they sort of feel like, I'm a writer and that's my job, is to write my book or my articles, and I don't really feel like I should have to be responsible for all these other things. And there's a lot of talk about branding, and I think the word brand has a lot of negative connotations for people. So I always think about my voice, because I think to a writer, thinking about your voice feels much more natural. So I say, well, what is my voice, and does my blog reflect my voice, and what is my voice, and how do I want to communicate? And I feel that many writers, if they got more into it, they would appreciate that things like Twitter and Facebook and blogging, everybody has to come to them differently. Different projects lend themselves to these things differently. Different personalities lend themselves to these things differently. So there's no one size fits all. But I think for many people, if they would just let themselves try it and experiment a little bit, they would find a way to use it that would feel acceptable to themselves. Because I think the one thing that seems really clear, at least I feel like it's very clear to me, is that the more we as writers can do to help readers find their way to our work, the better off we're going to be. Because the world is getting more and more full of options. It's getting harder and harder for people to just run into your book. I always think of the person who would love to read a book but doesn't even know that it exists. How do they even know that it's there? Are they going to run into it in a bookstore? Are they going to read a book review of it? Is a friend going to tell them about it? Like, how do they even know that it's out there? And it's hard to create those opportunities. And so the more that we as writers can help generate those opportunities, the better off we're going to be. And so this idea of helping yourself, I think as a writer, if you think of yourself, I want to engage with my readers instead of like, I want to promote my brand. Promoting your brand, like they don't want to do that. But engage with their readers. That's the kind of way I think writers can make it seem like something that they would like to try to do. It is such a good question to know how my time is used. And every day I keep thinking I should be like a lawyer and keep a time diary and really see how I'm spending my time, because I'm really not sure. And it's so natural to me, it's so much part of me now to check my Facebook page and to check Twitter and to read the comments on my blog and answer them and to read my email. It feels manageable. It still feels manageable, and I still feel like I'm getting the amount. To me, what I always say is, do I have time to do original writing today? Which to me is the most demanding intellectual work that I have, and everything is secondary to that other than my family. So it's like, do I have that time in my day? So first I put that time in. But as it is now, I still have that time. There's only so much time I can really be working at that level, because I burn out. I don't have that much capacity. Something like checking my email is easier to fit in when I am working at a lower pace. So it still feels manageable. I can see how it could become unmanageable. But I love it too. I know some people really don't like it, but I love to be feeling like I'm engaged with readers. Before, with all my other books, that all that stuff hadn't really come into being, and I had no way to do it. And now I still really appreciate the ability to be in contact with people. So I spend a lot of time on it, but I find it very valuable. That very valuable time. Well, it's interesting because as a nonfiction writer, one of the things that I really love is the intellectual freedom that came with choosing my subject. And I've written on Winston Churchill, I've written about why people destroy their own possessions, and I love being able to just pick my different subjects. But one thing about happiness is that it's such a gigantic subject that it feels inexhaustible. And so now I've created this world of the Happiness Project so far, and I can foresee doing it for some time. By the time I was done with my biography of Winston Churchill, I sort of felt at peace with the idea of Winston Churchill. I felt that I knew everything that I wanted to learn. I had come to my own conclusions, and I felt done with it. I wouldn't have wanted to write another book about Winston Churchill. But happiness feels bigger because it's everything from relationships to your home, to your friends, to your work, your body. I just got very interested in smells, the power of smell. So it feels very inexhaustible. And so I can imagine working on it for a long time and figuring out different ways to build it out and extend it, because the subject itself feels so rich. I don't think every subject would be like that, at least for me, but I feel fortunate that I did find a subject that felt so vast and so fascinating.